Welcome back to new lesson, and today we're going to talk about the difference between alone, lonely, lonesome, and lone. They all mean the same, but there are some differences. Okay, so let's get started with this. First comes alone. Well, when should you use the word alone? Alone, a person or thing, when a person or thing is separate or there is no other around. So if a person or a thing is separate from others, right, and there is nothing or there is no one around, you can use the word alone, right, to talk about the man, okay, or sometime thing. So an example, I like to be alone for short periods. Okay, so sometimes we need kind of breathing a space in our life. Sometimes we need kind of personal time. Okay, we need to have some we need to spend some time alone, right? Okay, so we don't like to be surrounded by people. Okay, even our relatives or even people who are very close to us. Okay, sometimes we need to be alone, right? So you can say that I like to be alone for short periods. So I like to separate myself from others, right? Separate myself from others. So I could say that I like to be alone for short periods. And lonely and lonesome you can use, but lonesome is used informal. Okay, so it is mainly used in the US, and it is rather informal. Okay, so you shouldn't be using this word in kind of formal situation. You shouldn't do that. Okay, so lonely you can use, and lonely means, or lonesome is unhappiness caused by being alone. So have you got that? If you want to be alone, you can be alone, and after being alone for a short period or long, a new feeling will arise. That is loneliness. That is why unhappiness caused by being alone. So if you are alone and after being alone for some time, if you feel lonely, you can say that and if you feel unhappy, you can say that my unhappiness or this unhappiness is caused by being alone. So a person becomes alone first, and then he or she starts to feel lonely. Okay, so it is caused by unhappiness caused by being alone. Okay, so an example, I like to be alone for short periods. Okay, but after a few days I start getting lonely or lonesome. So you can say that I like to be alone for short periods. Okay, as I said earlier. But after a few days, I start getting lonely. That means after a few days, I start feeling unhappy. I become unhappy, right? I don't like to be alone anymore. I like to be, with people. I like to be surrounded with people, okay? So after passing some days being alone, I start to feel unhappy. So that is why I'm saying I like to be alone for short periods, not for long, maybe a couple of hours or at best a couple of days. But after a few days, I start getting lonely or lonesome. Either of them can be used. Okay, you can use either of them. But alone can be emphasized by all. So sometimes we can use the word alone and we can emphasize by using the word all with that. Okay. So the example, after her husband died, she was all alone. So it was a devastating incident of her life. So you were talking about that. And after her husband died, she was all alone. So she was alone and no one was beside her. Okay, she was all alone. She was fully alone, right? So she was all alone. You can say that. I have used all to emphasize the word alone. Okay. There is another point you should remember, that alone isn't used before a noun. Alone isn't used before a noun. You can't say a lone man. You can't say she is an alone girl. You can't say, right? Alone is not used before a noun. It cannot be used before a noun. Okay. Just like this one. I like to be alone. Look. Here alone, and after that preposition stirs, okay, or other phrases, but you can't use before, you can use alone before noun, okay. Another thing, lone or solitary can be used instead, but it is a rather literary term, okay. So an example, the only green thing was a lone or solitary pine tree. So you can see that pine tree is a noun here. Pine tree is a noun. But and I use the lone, or I can use lone or solitary to talk about that pine tree. Okay, so here pine tree was just one pine tree, just a pine tree, and it was alone. That is why I have used lone or solitary. I can use that, or I can use them, either of them, but I can't use alone. Like the only green thing was an alone pine tree. I can't use that. Okay, so the only green thing was a lone or solitary pine tree. Solitary means the same as alone or lone does. Okay, so this is all about alone, lonely, lonesome, or lone. I hope you enjoyed and understood the lesson very well, and if you did, just hit the thumbs up below, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to your YouTube channel, Vlog. Hope to see you. Bye bye.